For 450 years, the Israelites lived in Egypt, most of the time as slaves. They longed for the Promised Land, also called the land of milk and honey. It was to be where the kingdom of God was to be established. Led by Moses, they finally arrived at the borders of Canaan. The land looked promising, so they sent out 12 spies to survey it. They reported great richness, but also powerful and hostile enemies, as Canaan was made up of many smaller kingdoms, each of which with their own pagan gods and horrible practices. Kingdoms such as the Philistines, Hittites, Ammonites, Midianites, and others. This frightened the Israelites, and as a result, they were forced to retreat back into the desert for 40 years. After the 40 years, Israel was led by one of those spies, Joshua, to enter Canaan and remove these kingdoms, establishing the kingdom of God forever in the Promised Land. The reason for removing the occupants was that their religions could and eventually did tempt the Israelites from fully following God. At first, the Israelites were pretty successful, but eventually they were led into idolatry by the very people they were supposed to remove from Canaan. In other words, the influence of the religions of the former occupants influenced and prohibited the Israelites from successfully following God and his instructions for a successful kingdom. This eventually led them into captivity in Babylon. Now we enter into the life and ministry of Jesus. As God planned it, the name Joshua is the Hebrew version of the name Jesus or Yeshua. Like Joshua, Jesus stands at the border of our lives with us, ready to establish the kingdom of God within. However, the Promised Land has changed. Instead of a physical land, Jesus' kingdom is to be established within each of us. But what affects it is our free will. Like the Israelites, we have kingdoms already established in our minds. Kingdoms such as false religion, false doctrine, unforgiveness, pride, rebellion, sin, and ancestral sin. Like the Israelites, these kingdoms give the enemy territories from which he can influence us, making it difficult to grow the kingdom of God within. In other words, we struggle with following God because of the influence and temptations of the enemy. Jesus desires to lead us in removing these false kingdoms, but he only empowers this through our choice and free will.